Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Q&Play, my monthly Q&A series where I answer your questions in a rambly, unscripted format. I've got a headache, so let's do this. First question comes from LyrinaeSings. I know you're not big on anime, but have you tried Delicious in Dungeon? It's on Netflix. It's a very cool story inspired by D&D with its very own detailed world building. I have watched Delicious in Dungeon. I watched all of it, and I'm happy to say that I really loved it. I ended up checking it out because I'm a big fan of Cyberpunk Edgerunners and Cyberpunk 2077, and Studio Trigger, who did work on Cyberpunk Edgerunners, also did Delicious in Dungeon. And I was thinking, I like that show, and this one's about D&D type stuff, so naturally I thought I'll enjoy this too. And I really did. I watched the dub because I was building a Lego set while I was watching the show and didn't want to give it my complete undivided attention. I like dividing my attention when I watch TV, what can I say? And I have to say, I don't regret that at all. The dub was really solid. There are shows where the dub is, bad. Squid Game is a really perfect example. Godzilla -1 is a film with a pretty bad dub in my opinion. But Delicious in Dungeon, I mean, dang, this cast was really solid. There's only a couple moments, literally 2 moments in the entire show where I thought, that probably didn't translate so well. But overall, I'm happy to say that the dub was great, the cast was great. Sungwon as Senshi. I love Sungwon as a YouTuber. I've loved him for a long time now, since before he was a voice actor, and I love seeing him thrive in that industry. And Damien from Smosh plays Laios. Like, I couldn't even hear him, and I'm a pretty big Smosh fan. Like, I don't watch most of their stuff, but I thought I would be able to recognize him, and yeah, I straight up didn't. Anyway, yeah, cast was great, story was cute, love the animation, love the setting, love the characters and the dialogue. It all flows very naturally, and I love the world building. It's great. There are times where I feel like the exposition is a lot. Like, there's a point where Laios stops the plot, stares at this knight, and goes, "Whoa, that knight has different armor than the other knights. He's the leader." And I'm like, yeah, bro, I know. There were a few times where the characters are explaining things. I'm like, yeah, I know. You're not explaining cool world building. You're just explaining stuff I already was well aware of. Anyway, that didn't happen enough that I didn't like the show or anything. For the most part, it was really fun. I'm looking forward to season 2, which, yeah, I'm sure is going to be awesome. If you're wondering who my favorite character is, though, it's not Laios, it's not Senshi, it's Marcel. She's literally me in elf form, okay? Like, I watched the show with my dad, and he pointed at Marcel and said, "That's you, Crispy," because I am my family's picky eater, and you know what? I felt her in every moment of the show. Also, she might be gay, which means it's only a matter of time before I cosplay her too, because we all know that's apparently my field of expertise. Hey Crispy, I've been really struggling to find any sort of maps for my games. Where'd you get yours? Great question. Thank God for CzePeku. This video is sponsored by CzePeku. Yeah, they're back. And you know why they're back? Because they're awesome. You don't need to pay me to talk about how great CzePeku is. I do it all the time anyway. Not only are CzePeku's maps of extreme quality, but they're uploaded all the time as well. You're getting new maps every couple weeks, and each map have so many variants. Like, look at this Marketplace Festival. You can go from the happy little township to a massive arcane explosion fit for a final boss. But guess what? They're not just making maps now. They're making tokens as well. CzePeku tokens have opened up on their website. Each token having tons of variants, and you get 20 plus tokens every month starting at just the $4 tier. You can pre-subscribe for CzePeku tokens right now on their website and subscribe to their Patreon for their incredible maps starting at just the $1 tier. If you guys are interested, then you can head down into the description down below where you can pick up CzePeku's maps on their Patreon starting at just the $1 tier, as well as a link to CzePeku's website where you can pre-subscribe to CzePeku's brand new tokens. As always, supporting our sponsors does support us. Thank you so much to CzePeku for sponsoring this week's videos. And without further ado, let's get back to the advice. Question from FellowInconsistent. What things do you play D&D for? Realism, magic, cinematics, exploration, self-discovery, escape, role-playing, comedy choices, teamwork, friendship, thematics, etc.? Pretty much everything in that list, save for realism. Like, realism is just not something I'm thinking of all that much while I'm playing Dungeons & Dragons. I'm gonna be real with you. I will take inspiration from real life, especially when it comes to fashion. Looking at historical fashion or even current runway trends can give you a lot of cool things to work with. And since I commission a lot of art for my world, because, I mean, God knows what else I'm gonna spend my freaking money on, finding references through history is really cool and useful. But aside from that, nah, realism is not exactly my thing. I'll make my players keep track of, like, food occasionally. Like, if they're in the wilderness for a really, really, really long time, I'm gonna start getting on their bums about not restocking. But besides that, I'm pretty lax. Besides that, what I really love about D&D is just seeing people react to things I set up and made with emotion and with shock. I mean, that's great. I like seeing people get emotional over my D&D game. I don't know how else to describe it. Whether they're happy or sad or angry, like, those things are really, really cool. That's why I really want people to turn on their cameras when we play D&D. I'm not going to force anyone at gunpoint, obviously, but, like, I like seeing people's faces when I play. It's easier for me to roleplay, and I just like seeing people's reactions. Seeing people bond with an NPC I created, or rant about how much they hate a particular villain. That is all cool. Seeing people take notes about your lore and keeping track of your characters. That feels amazing. And that's why I encourage players to try their best to engage with the Dungeon Master's world and their story, because if you are engaged, it's easier for you to make that story your own as well. People who aren't engaged often miss out on all the things that make D&D fun. Like, if you're not having fun playing D&D and you're always on your phone, then either that's something you need to talk to your DM about, or you might need to consider that the reason you're not having fun is because you're not putting anything into the game. You need to put something in order to get something out. Anyway, yeah, those are what I love and don't really prioritize in my D&D game. Next up, from Baniboo. Are you someone who enjoys going to conventions? No, I don't. I don't like people. I don't like crowded spaces. I don't like nasty smells. I don't like noise. That sounds like a convention to me. But seriously, yeah, that's why I don't really go to Gen Con or any other nerd conventions. I can be persuaded to go. In fact, I have been persuaded to go next year, at this point at least, until I change my mind again. I was going to go this past year, but I backed out because I just can't really see myself enjoying a convention, especially since I have to put something in, right? Like, conventions cost money to go. They ain't free. On top of that, it's not like I'm gonna take friends. The convention's pretty far away, and I'm not expecting my friends to drop that much money on a plane ticket and on the con ticket, so yeah, there's that to consider. I know there are benefits, and I have weighed those benefits. You know, from a business standpoint, purely, networking is great at conventions. Meeting your fans is great. I mean, it would be cool for me to meet some of you guys, and it would be cool to meet the people I work with in person. But I'm not really one of those people that really values that so much. Like, I'm just not a people person, guys. Like, I think people really underestimate when I say that. I mean, I am a certified hermit. I go many, many days, sometimes even weeks, without speaking or seeing another physical human being besides, like, grocery store clerks and such. It's not because I'm scared or nervous. It's usually just because I've got other stuff to do and it's not really at the top of my priorities. I love hanging out with my friends, and I'm sure I would enjoy Gen Con. I just don't know for, like, a complete certainty. But, you know, I am willing to take the risk with a year of planning ahead of it, you know? So next year, you'll probably see me at Gen Con. Question from XBlueXFire. Is there a story behind how you pronounce weird? Is it a dialect? Nope. I just like messing with you guys. Next question. Question from Child of the Void. I'm new here, so sorry if this is common knowledge. Do you play other RPG systems besides Dungeons & Dragons? If so, which ones? What's your funniest RPG story? And what are your pronouns? For starters, in terms of systems besides Dungeons & Dragons, I am dealing with Draw Steel, which is the new Matt Colville MCDM RPG. I am currently looking through all of it. I'm really hyped for that book. When it fully releases, I am definitely going to be at least starting some one-shots or something along those lines for that game. I don't know if my friends are interested in it. They're really comfortable with all my 5th edition content, and obviously switching would come with its own challenges. At this point, I homebrew pretty much everything for 5th edition. Like, if the players are fighting a boss, there's a almost 100% chance that boss is going to be created by me. And if they're fighting enemies, there's a pretty good, 40% chance that enemy is going to be created by me. Like, I use enemies from Flee Immortals, but at this point, I've used up a lot of the roster, and I want something more specific for my campaign instead of just reskins, so I will often just create a stat block. It helps that I genuinely enjoy creating monsters in the Flee Immortals MCDM style. It really suits me. Switching to a whole new system would kind of counteract that. It would be harder for me to even just generate stat blocks in the first place because I use a website for that, and a website for Draw Steel is probably not going to release immediately unless MCDM are really generous. So yeah, drawbacks. But on the other hand, Draw Steel does look really interesting. It caters to all the things I love about RPGs, and especially RPG combat. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. In terms of funny stories, I do have a little one from my last session. My party got really sidetracked because they just realized that the satyr might leave goat droppings everywhere because, he's half goat. And, we got sidetracked on a 30-minute long debate on that. So take that as you will. I tried asking around on various D&D Discord servers, urgently asking, do satyrs poop like normal goats? And I didn't get any clear answers. So, you guys are free to weigh in on that. Anyway, the third question, what are your pronouns? He, they. I've identified as that for about a year now, and yeah, I think it's going all right with me. I'm comfortable there. Question from El Musco. How could I implement something that isn't part of D&D into a campaign to please my players? Example, a friend of mine who got addicted to the Owl House recently. Great thing to get addicted to. We love the Owl House here. And in terms of implementing things, it depends on how much your players are willing to suspend disbelief. Like, for example, one of my friends played Destiny, and he specifically asked me, hey, can I play as this homebrew Arcstrider Monk subclass I found? Because Monk seems interesting, and I love the Arcstrider from Destiny, so can I play as this? And I said yes, and over the course of the campaign, he got various magic items that let him cast mini versions of other supers, like Chromatic Orb in replacement for Nova Bomb. And you know what? It was really fun for him. The other players didn't get the references, but him and I really enjoyed them. Of course, for other people, they might see that as too heavy-handed or, immersion breaking, which, I don't know, fun police over here, but I get it. It depends on your group. For me, I like putting little references everywhere. I use concept art from games I like in my magic items. I use quotes from games I like in the inscription text. I base my NPCs on existing characters that I really love. Like, for example, a lot of people caught on that Yumi from 10th Tune is similar to Songbird from Cyberpunk 2077. Hell, even their names are similar. Somi, Yumi, but that was actually largely unintentional, as Yumi existed before I even met Song So-mi from Cyberpunk. But their characters do have a lot of similarities and references, especially when it comes to appearance. I based a lot of Yumi off of Songbird, and I didn't find that immersion breaking at all. In fact, I loved Yumi all the more because she was based on a character I really, really loved. And I think it made her a better character because Songbird, Song So-mi, she is a conflicted, fascinating character, and using that as my basis, it worked out really well for me. Of course, this is for your players. I know how much suspension of disbelief I can have. I know I don't care about ripping off a character and just sticking them into my game with a bunch of changes to fit my homebrew world. I don't care about that. But you're trying to please your players. So ask them what they're comfortable with. Do they want an item based on Amity's staff from the Owl House? Because that could be really, really cool. Or maybe you could break their immersion. Who knows? Question from ClickClackrocks. Always been curious, you seem to say check out our or send them to us in your videos. And I was just wondering if there are teams behind the channel or, as I assumed, it was just yourself. No ill will either way, I've just always been curious. So, yes, I lie. In every outro, I'm using the royal we. In fact, when I first met with my agent a couple months ago, so we could set up our partnership, I used the royal we just on instinct, and he was like, oh, who's your team? Should I set up something with them? And I was like, whoa, sorry, no, royal we. I just always done that just on happenstance. I've had friends or just agencies help me out with the channel in the past. Currently, and honestly for the foreseeable future, I'm working with the LFI Talent Agency, who also manage like Ginny D and D&D Shorts. I'm under that same umbrella, and it's been great. And so I suppose you can include them in my little we, since they are a big part of the channel at this point. They basically set up all my brand deals and manage my email, and a lot of the time they're the ones who send your horror stories over to me whenever they end up in the business email, so that's really great. Besides that, from a jokey standpoint, I guess you could say that the we refers to the clones, because God knows I have a bunch of those. Question from tyrocksateverything. Do you use actual mythology when you DM, like Greek, Norse, etc.? I don't really. Actual mythology is really fascinating, but it's also realistic. And it's not like the Greeks were worried about consistent world building or making sure that their lore is understandable to the players, because the Greeks were real people who were just telling stories to each other. I usually use video game lore and mythos when taking inspiration from my world, because developers of good video game lore and mythos, they need to worry about stuff like consistency and making sure things come across to the players and creating open threads for the players to interact with. And let me make this clear, those same things exist in mythology. Like, for example, in God of War, the writers clearly used the hanging thread of the Dropnir ring from Norse mythology to create Kratos' new weapon, the Dropnir spear. So there you go. That's actually a brilliant example of how you can use existing mythology to create your own story. But for me, I find it really convenient to look at lore that was meant to be implemented into some kind of game space. Everything about good lore, like in Destiny or Dishonored, it's built to set things up in a world that is played through. And therefore, I think it's a much better place to take inspiration from, at least for the kind of worlds that I build. Of course, those worlds themselves also take inspiration from mythology, and while structurally I don't use a lot of mythological inspiration, name-wise, I do. All the time. If I need to come up with some fancy names, myths are a great place to look. Also, more obscure myths and legends like the Manananggal of my homeland of the Philippines, well, that works as a great shocking beast for your players, because they got no idea what the heck that thing is. The point is, myths are cool. I use video games more often, but myths are cool too. Man, recording this has been a pain in the butt. This headache is killing me. But in any case, if you guys enjoyed, then you might enjoy our latest episode of RPG Horror Stories. You guys have been loving the past 2 Monday episodes. It's linked in the cards, by the way. But before you go, please do leave a like on this one if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern so you don't miss any of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own questions or thoughts, you can go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment outsider's mark to reference the game I'm playing in the background and to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Farewell.